Epilogue. Clay. 1 month later. Clay's stomach was a bundle of nerves as he knocked on the captain's door. He'd received a note that the captain wanted to see him, but he had no idea why. He'd racked his brain as he walked, trying to think of what he could have done, but he'd come up blank. Captain Goen was a large man, a man who looked as if he'd seen the worst the world had to offer. The lines on his face were deep and vast, and his gray eyes reminded Clay of a brewing storm. He was intimidating, to say the least, and Clay swallowed his anxiety as the man waved him inside.
"Officer Young, come on in and shut the door behind you."
Oh no, this was a closed-door meeting? That couldn't be good. Clay's throat felt as thick as sludge in an engine.
"You wanted to see me, sir?" "I did. Have a seat."
He pointed to a well-worn chair across the desk from him, and Clay sat. He could feel the sweat building on his palms, and he wiped them across his thighs, hoping the captain wouldn't notice.
"Tell me, Officer Young, how do you like patrol?"
He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers as he stared at Clay. Clay wondered if this was a trick question. Did anyone really like patrol? Nearly everyone started there, but it was usually more like a holding pattern until there was a department to move into, and Clay had been on patrol for several years.
"I like patrol fine, sir, but I'm ready to move on when there's an opening. And is there any particular department you'd like to move into?"
Clay hesitated. Was there a right or wrong answer here?
"I'd be open to almost anything, sir, but I'd love something where I could use my deductive skills to figure out the case." "Like you did with your brother's case?" "Yes, sir." "Well, Officer Young, we happen to have an opening in our Special Victims Unit, and I have your detective test results here that say you're now officially a detective."
He'd passed the test? Clay had thought he'd done well, but paper tests weren't his strength. He much preferred being hands-on in the field.
"Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. You put in the work. Now, we need someone we can put in SVU right away, and Captain Taylor requested you."
She did. Clay had only met Captain Taylor once, but she was inspiring and formidable. A woman in her mid to late 40s, Captain Taylor had been a police officer for nearly 2 decades. She commanded respect as if it floated like an invisible shield around her.
"Yes, she did, and I don't think I have to tell you that's high praise." "No, sir, you don't. Now, before you say anything, the hours will be longer, and the work can be challenging. But if you think you're up for the task, we'd like to offer you the position."
Clay hesitated for a moment and sent up a prayer for wisdom. He absolutely wanted to take this job, but he also wanted to make sure it was where God wanted him. Special victims would be challenging. They dealt with a lot of abuse cases, sexual assault, child and domestic abuse, things that were hard to see every day. But they were also very important things, and the unit was needed. He felt nothing but a sense of peace.
"I am, sir. How soon do they want me?" "You report tomorrow. They just lost a team member and they want a replacement right away. That going to be a problem?" "No, sir," he said with a smile. "I'm ready."
Captain Goen stood and extended a hand.
"Good. Captain Taylor is expecting you, so stop in to introduce yourself officially and be prepared to start a new journey tomorrow."
"Thank you, sir." Clay shook the captain's hand and then exited the office. Excitement and nerves battled each other in his stomach, making him feel a little queasy. But he forced them down and made his way to the Special Victims Department. As he pushed open the door, a Hispanic woman with long, dark, curly hair looked up at him from her desk. "Can I help you?"
"I'm Clay Young. I was just transferred here and I'm supposed to check in with Captain Taylor."
The woman's eyes raked over him. "You look a little old to still be a patrol officer." Clay bristled. Yes, he was older than most of the patrol officers, but he'd started later. Most cops joined the force at 21. Clay had gone into the military first. He'd served 8 years before retiring and joining the force. He hadn't minded military life, but he'd hated the deployments and had wanted to stay in one place. Becoming a cop when he got out had just made sense.
"Well, I passed my detective test, so I guess I'm not a patrol officer any longer."
She stared at him a moment longer as if she was assessing him, but then nodded. "Follow me." She led him to the only office in the room and tapped on the doorframe. "Captain, Officer Young is here to see you." Captain Taylor glanced up and smiled. "Come on in, Officer Young." He entered and sat at the chair she motioned to. He noticed it wasn't in any better shape than the ones in Gowen's office had been, even though the department was newer. "I guess Captain Gowen told you why you're here?"
"Yes, ma'am, and I'm ready to get to work."
She tilted her head and studied him. "SVU is a different animal, Officer Young. Are you sure you're ready to handle it?"
"Yes, ma'am. I saw a lot of hard things when I was in the military, so I know what I'm getting into. I also have a sister and know how important this job is. I'm ready."
"I believe you are. Okay, you start tomorrow. Flores out there will be your partner." He looked back toward the open area.
"The one who brought me here?"
Captain Taylor's eyebrow lifted. "Is that going to be a problem?" Clay wasn't sure they'd gotten off on the right foot, but he was sure he could make it work.
"No, ma'am, not at all."
"Good. Leave me your contact information, and then I'll see you in the morning." Clay jotted down his information and then exited the office. Flores looked up at him briefly as he passed, but she didn't say anything. She was going to be a tough cookie to crack. But Clay wasn't concerned. He felt in his gut that this was where he was supposed to be, so he knew God would work it all out. Though he was now off for the day, he didn't feel like going straight home, so he drove to the hospital instead to tell Garrett and Renee his news. Ever since Garrett's ordeal, Renee had become a regular at the house for dinners. The two were getting serious, and Clay had no doubt that Garrett would propose soon, but he was happy for him. Renee was a great woman, and she complimented him well. He pulled into the hospital and made his way to the pediatric unit on the 3rd floor. Renee was working the desk today and smiled when she saw him. "Clay, good to see you. Is everything all right?"
"Everything is fine. I just wanted to share some news with you and Garrett. Is he available?"
"Yeah, he's just finishing with a patient. He should be out in a minute." As if summoned by her words, Garrett stepped out of a room and grinned when he saw Clay.
"Hey, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to tell you guys that I passed my detective exam." "What? That's great, man. But that's not all," Clay said with a grin. "You're also looking at the newest member of the Special Victims Unit."
"Oh, Clay, that is so amazing," Renee said. "You are going to do great things. I just know it."
"Thanks. I hate that doing amazing things means bad things are happening to others, but I'm glad to be of service."
His cell phone vibrated in his pocket, and he pulled it out to see a number he didn't recognize. Holding up a finger to let Renee and Garrett know he'd be right back, he stepped away and answered the call.
"This is Officer Young."
"I think you mean Detective Young," said the voice on the other end. "This is Captain Taylor, and I know I said I'd see you tomorrow, but we just got a call. I need you at the Vinewood Hotel."
"Yes, ma'am. I'll be right there."
He ended the call and returned to the nurse's station.
"Sorry, guys. Gotta run. Duty call's already." "Be careful out there," Garrett said. "I will."
But Clay knew there were things you couldn't predict. Garrett's abduction had reinforced that, but he would keep his eyes open. And if he was lucky, he'd stay out of harm's way and help a lot of people in the process. His new journey started today. The end. If you'd like to follow Clay, be sure to look for the spin-off series coming soon. And if you liked this book, leave a review. Even a few short words really helps.